The attic of the Porter estate smelled of cedar, old paper, and the heavy, humid silence of a Virginia summer. For Ellie Porter, a 30-year-old archivist from Boston, this house was a mausoleum of secrets she had spent her life trying to avoid. Her grandfather, Silas, had been a man of few words and many locked drawers. Now that he was gone, the keys sat heavy in Ellie's palm, cold and biting. "One last puzzle, Ellie," she whispered to the empty room. She pushed aside a moth-eaten wool blanket, revealing a small iron-bound chest hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Unlike the rest of the clutter, this box was pristine, no dust, no cobwebs. It had been waiting. Inside, resting on a bed of faded indigo velvet, was a brass compass. It wasn't a standard military issue. The casing was engraved with intricate vines and a single weeping willow tree. When Ellie picked it up, she realized the needle didn't point north. It jittered erratically, swaying toward the east, toward the dense woods of the wilderness battlefield where thousands of men had vanished in 1864. As her thumb brushed a hidden spring, the back of the compass popped open. Instead of a manufacturer's mark, there was a hand-etched map and a single sentence in elegant cursive script. "The truth is not found in the light of the sun, but in the shadow of the oak." Ellie felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. As an historian, she knew that handwriting. It matched the letters of Captain Samuel Thorne, a Union officer rumored to be a traitor, a man whose name had been scrubbed from the local history books. But there was something else. Tucked behind the map was a lock of hair tied with a blue ribbon and a scrap of paper with a date, May 5th, 1864, the day the woods screamed. Ellie looked out the attic window toward the tree line in the distance. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the lawn. She realized then that her grandfather hadn't left her an inheritance. He had left her a confession. The compass wasn't broken. It was pointing to something the world had forgotten, or something someone had worked very hard to hide. May 5th, 1864. The Wilderness, Virginia. The air was no longer air. It was a thick, sulphurous soup of gunpowder and burning pine. Captain Samuel Thorne pressed his back against the rough bark of a giant white oak, his lungs screaming for a clean breath. Around him, the forest was screaming too. The Battle of the Wilderness was a nightmare of geometry. In the dense underbrush, regiments couldn't see 10 feet in front of them. Men fired at ghosts, at rustling leaves, at the terrified shouts of their own brothers. "Captain," a voice hissed from the thicket. Samuel didn't lower his Colt revolver. Out of the smoke emerged Sarah. She wasn't wearing the rags of a fugitive. She wore a sturdy gray coat and carried a satchel that seemed heavier than gold. To the Union Army, she was a contraband, an escaped slave seeking refuge. To Samuel, she was the only person who knew the truth about what lay beneath the soil of Virginia. "Did you find it?" Samuel whispered, his eyes scanning the haze for Confederate gray. "The stones are where the map said," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the roar of cannons in the distance. "But the general's men, they aren't looking for rebels, Captain. They're looking for us." Samuel felt the weight of the brass compass in his pocket, the same compass Ellie would hold 160 years later. It wasn't just a tool for trekking through the woods. Inside its casing lay the location of the Copperhead Ledger, a document proving that high-ranking officials in Washington were funding the Southern Rebellion to prolong the war for profit. Suddenly, a volley of musket fire shattered the branch above Samuel's head. "Run!" Samuel commanded. They tore through the brambles, the forest floor slick with blood and dry needles. The woods were catching fire. The wilderness was becoming a furnace. Samuel knew that if they died here, the truth died with them. The ledger would be lost, and the war would be steered by men who traded lives for gold. As they reached a hidden ravine, Samuel pulled Sarah into the shadows. He took the compass from his pocket and handed it to her. "If I don't make it to the rally point," Samuel said, his voice ragged, "take this to the house with the weeping willow. Bury it beneath the floor of the attic. One day, someone with my blood or your spirit will come looking. They must know that we didn't just fight for a flag, we fought for the soul of this country." Sarah looked at the compass, then at the fire consuming the horizon. "They'll call you a traitor for disappearing, Samuel." "Let them," he said, drawing his sword as the sound of boots approached. "History is written by the survivors, but the truth waits in the dirt." The morning sun fought its way through the thick Virginian humidity, but it brought no warmth to Ellie. She sat at her grandfather's heavy oak desk, the brass compass resting on a photocopy of a 19th century topographical map. The compass was behaving strangely. Every time she moved it toward the eastern corner of the property, the section bordering the wilderness battlefield, the needle vibrated with an unnatural intensity. "Shadow of the oak," Ellie whispered, tracing the cursive writing again. She pulled up the digital archives of the Richmond Gazette from 1864. She searched for Samuel Thorne. The results were chilling. He wasn't listed as a hero, he was listed under deserters and deceivers. The article claimed he had vanished during the battle, presumably defecting to the South with stolen Union payroll. "You weren't a thief, Samuel," Ellie muttered. "You were a witness." She grabbed her hiking boots and a shovel. She needed to find that oak tree. But as she stepped onto the back porch, a flash of light caught her eye from the tree line. It was brief, the glint of sunlight hitting glass. Someone was in the woods. Someone with binoculars. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was no longer just an academic curiosity. Her grandfather had spent 50 years living as a recluse in this house. Now she understood why. He wasn't hiding from the world, he was guarding the entrance to a grave. Ellie didn't retreat. Instead, she took the back trail, the one hidden by overgrown blackberry bushes. She hiked for an hour, the compass in her hand acting like a dowsing rod. The air grew colder as she entered the shadow woods, a place where the trees grew so thick that the ground remained in perpetual twilight. Finally, she saw it. The great oak. It was a titan of a tree, its trunk scarred by what looked like ancient lightning strikes, or perhaps old lead bullets. At the base of the tree, tucked between two massive roots, was a flat stone marked with a carved S. As she knelt to clear the moss, a twig snapped behind her. "It's been a long time since a porter stood at that tree," a voice rasped. Ellie spun around. Standing 10 feet away was a man in a dark suit, looking entirely out of place in the muddy woods. He wasn't a local. He had the polished, dangerous look of someone from a DC law firm. "Who are you?" Ellie demanded, clutching the compass. "Someone who represents a very old interest, Miss Porter," the man said, stepping forward. "That compass doesn't belong to you. It belongs to a history that was meant to stay buried. Hand it over, and you can walk back to your car." Ellie looked at the stone, then at the man. She realized then that the copperhead ledger wasn't just a piece of paper. It contained names of families that were likely still in power today. "My grandfather died to keep this from people like you," Ellie said, her voice trembling but firm. "Your grandfather died an old, paranoid man. Don't follow in his footsteps."